Okay. So a row level trigger is activated for each row that is inserted, updated, or deleted. For example, if a table has 100 rows inserted, updated, or deleted, the trigger is automatically invoked, means took place 100 times for each 100 rows. That's why it's called the row level trigger. So it's worked on rows. MySQL only supports row level triggers. So this is a good piece of information you should recall or remember. Okay. Now, trigger timing and events. So this event is not a scheduled event. Event means when a trigger fired, the event took place. That's it mean. So there are two trigger action time modifiers. First one is before or after. That means the before the operation means insert, update, or delete, or after insert, update, and delete. So that's the timing of the action that will perform by a trigger. I'm sure some of you recall this figure, and I like this figure actually. This is a very interesting figure to explain trigger. So there are three applications of trigger: insert, update, and delete on a table, and trigger will be fired, say insert trigger, update trigger, and delete trigger based on the operation we are going to. Can you hear me? I hope I'm not lost.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, Professor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Glad to know. So this diagram explains how it works. As soon as we'll call a insert trigger, it will work on a table for insert operations. If update, then its trigger works on update operations. If deletion took place or deletion takes place, delete trigger will be activated. So this is the idea. So this is the general structure for the trigger. So those are those keywords: create trigger, right? And then the trigger name. Now this is the place where the trigger will took place, or the trigger will take place, before or after. So this is the timing. Then those are those operations for insert, update, or for delete. Then this is on is a keyword, and this is the table name. So every trigger must be associated with one table. And for each row, those three are also keywords. So because MySQL supports row level trigger, so this is true for all cases. Now we'll write our SQL block. So this is the general form for this trigger object. Okay. Now let's move to next slide. So we know what are those different kind of triggers, their timings, and let's know going to see an example of a trigger. Let's know what are the benefits of having triggers. So triggers provide another way to check the integrity of data. Now, do you know what is integrity of data? This is a very important question. I'm just trying to, I like to open my camera, and if you don't mind, you can open the camera. It will be an open discussion because this is a very nice piece. And you are familiar with academic integrity, aren't you?
Yeah, it has
Yes.
to be unique, sir.
So what is data integrity?
For example, sir, if we have a roll number row, so it should contain numeric data. So if we are entering any character data or a string data, so it shouldn't accept that. So that is a data integrity, sir.
Yes, right. Yeah, thanks, Akash. It's a good example. So data integrity ensures that your database only contain a valid piece of data. and you have to ensure that by defining the data type, and you will know gradually. You can do pattern matching, this kind of thing. So data integrity is something that makes sure that your database don't accept other than a defined piece of data. That's the key of data integrity. Okay. And for triggers are a handy tool to make sure that your database is accepting valid data, means keeping data integrity in place. Clear? Anyone has confusion about data integrity? Because we are going to use this data integrity word lots from now, and you will go upper levels, means upper semester, you will know this thing more, and you will use this thing more. Okay. And when you will be doing capstone project, data integrity is one of the checking that your professor will do. So say you design a project with that accepting garbage data. Say we have a voter list, right? And every voter should be alive. Now, if we add a voter, that person's birthday is 1905. Do you think it's a valid data? Although you mentioned that your data birthday year 4-digit, right? But now it is 2022, and 905 is 95 plus 22. So how many years? Do you think any living human is still to give the vote in age of 130? I don't believe. So it is a invalid data, even though data piece is valid 1905. So when you design a database, you have to look after different type of thing. Make sense? Hopefully. Yes. Okay. So I'm going back to the slide again. Yes.
Yeah, but normally we validate that kind of data from the programming side. That's why we don't do much in trigger.
Yeah, I understand. So those are those tools. It not necessarily you have to use it every time, but I know front end controls a lot of things. That's for sure. But you have to be careful about database design as well. Good. So I'm going back to the slide. So that was first is integrity of data. Second one is triggers handle errors from database layer. So that's the thing, like another way, the same thing in another way. Triggers give an alternative way to run scheduled tasks. By using triggers, you don't have to wait for the scheduled event to run, because triggers are invoked automatically before or after a change made to the data table. So it is not time sensitive, it is command sensitive, that I was telling a few minutes before. Triggers can be useful for auditing data changes in table. So this is also a good thing. Okay, so if you made any change, then trigger is a way to look at that. Good. Let's go to an example. Okay. So we are going to create a table. That table name is account. Okay. And if I go back here, I already have in database 1, you can see there is a table called account. And it had some data. I actually tested a couple of times, so you can see a lot of data already there. Now, let's go back to the slide again. Now let's create, I already created the table, so I'm not going to create it again. So let's create the trigger that's name insert or insertion sum, and it will take place before insert on the table name is account, and obviously for each row, because we want a row level trigger, right? So create trigger, and for each row, then set sum equal to sum plus new amount. So we are inserting new data, so the sum will be changed. That's why. So do you know why we are putting this @ sign? Anybody like to give a feedback why you are putting @ sign before these
Parameters.
parameters? Yes, those are parameters, but the reason of putting @ is it is telling the MySQL system that this is a user-defined variable. So parameters may be a numeric or constant, numeric value or constant sometime, but obviously most time or many times it is a variable as well. And if you put @ sign, means this is a user-defined variable. All right. Okay, so let's create this trigger. So I'm copying this code and going to this database 1. I'm going to select the database 1 and go here. I'm pasting the code here and let's go. So you can see this created. So I'm refreshing the database. Okay. Now let's go in the table. I'm clicking on the table. You can see a lot of data because I tested, but if I click on this plus sign, you can see this trigger is saved here. And if I click here, you can see I created a few triggers, but this is insertion sum trigger. And you can see the definition of this or the code segment of this trigger. So instead of when we talked about functions, means user-defined functions and procedures, those are actually stored in a server side in the location of functions or procedures. But in case of triggers, you can see it is stored with the same place of a table because it's associated with the table. And that's why we are telling it is an database object, and this object associated with a certain table. Make sense? Okay. Now, the objective of this trigger is show us the sum. So let's go see the output. Because trigger is there, and we are going to insert some value to the account. Let's go here. It should not be that slow. Okay, good. So we are putting some values, and you can see the ID is 137, 141, and 97, and we are putting values. I'm not sure if it is too small for you. I'm not sure if I can maximize this. Yeah, now probably it is better, right? So let's go. If I click on the go button, then it goes. And you can see here, the total amount is 5 inserted there. So if I go back in the query again, you can see for account number 137 is $5, 141 is $5, and account number 97 is -5. And the total is obviously 5. Okay. Now let's go to this account table, and you can see at the very bottom the amount is 011. Where is the new amount? I should refresh it, I guess. That's interesting. It should give us some value as well here. I don't know why. We did some insertion as well, right? Let's go here. It's 5, 5. Let's make it 15. 15. 15 and make it 15. Let's go. And it's 45. That makes sense. And let's go in the account. Oh, it is in the second page, I believe. Okay, yeah. So go here. Yeah, see the last three amount is 15, 15, 15, and the previous one is 5, 5, 5. Yeah, so because it was not showing in there, maybe I can make it number of columns is 100. So we can see in a single row. Here. Columns. And account. Yeah, we can see the whole rows here. Now I have a question. You can see you are in level 2 of database management system. Can you tell me why we can see these account number should be a primary key, right? And it should not accept any repetition of the value. Why it is accepting this repeated account number in this table? What is the limitation? Can you tell me? A discussion question. I know you know, but I'm just like asking you this question to make this lecture interactive. Or anybody don't know?
We should set it that column as the primary key.
Yeah. So one reason is we didn't set the account number as a primary key. That's why it is taking the repeated input again and again, same. And if I go in the definition of these columns, and you will see there is no primary key definition is made. That's why it is taking the repeated value in even though it is a account number column, because it is just an example. I try to show you, and I didn't try to make my life hard. That's why I didn't put that constant in that table, right? So that we can insert different values and show the examples. Okay. But when you actually design a real database, you have to make sure that you define a primary key. And can you remember database normalization? Database normalization. It should be discussed in your level 1.
Yeah.
Good. And one of the reason of database normalization is avoid repetition, right? So if we have primary key defined, then it will not be allowed the system to take the duplicate value as an input. Okay, good. As a primary key, I mean. So I hope you understand this trigger example. Now, another trigger. So there is another trigger example here, and this create trigger is named as insertion or insert transaction. And when it will take place? Before insert, and which account? On which table? On account table. And obviously for each row precedes, and this is insertion sum. Now set deposits equal to deposits, and if new amount is 0 and new amount is greater than 0, then new amount will be 0. In case of deposits, in withdrawals, the amount, if the amount is less than 0, then the amount will be new amount will also be 0, but here is a condition. So this transaction will be fired before insert on the table account. Now I'm going to execute this thing by giving an example that will clear your understanding. And if you need to know more about those functions. Actually, I'm going to post this slide. You will find the slide in your week 2. Those examples are available. No, not this one. Just trying to find the, yeah. Control C. And I posted this. Oh no, why it is not copying? Okay, what's wrong? I can copy it, but why I can copy it from here? Is it here? And go in. Yeah. So this example is, I took it from the official manual of MySQL. Okay. So this trigger will act when any insertion takes place on table account. And in the chat box, I click here. You will find those examples and those explanations here. You can see the step by step, although I already told you those, but all those step by step explanation you will find there, right? Okay. Now let's move to next slide, and we're going to see another trigger. And after discussing this trigger, I'm going to show you the output that will actually help you to understand that. Okay, so this trigger is called update check, and this trigger will take place before any update operation in the same table account. And it will be obviously for each row. Now this is the begin, and this is the SQL code block. So if new amount is less than 0, set the new amount is 0, because your bank account cannot be a money in negative, right? Else if new amount is greater than 100, then make it 100. It's just a silly conditions to understand that the trigger is fired and it is changing the table. Then end if, and this end is the block of this, and this delimiter is the block of here. So let's run this trigger as well. So I'm copying this code, going there, here, go SQL, and I'm in DB1. Okay. I'm here, let's go. And it created this update checker, and I just let me refresh this. And you can see this update checker is created here. So this trigger and the trigger before, both trigger will take place when you insert or update any values in the account table, and they are controlling how much amount should be there in the account table and in the amount row. So let's check the output. So now I'm going to put an update command, update account, and let me choose the amount. And let's go back here. Go here, it's DB1, SQL, here, and you can add any amount. See, I gave a minus amount, and according to the condition, if you put a minus amount, if you go back here, if you put a minus amount, is less than 0, then the amount will be, new amount will be 0. And let's see if it works. Let's go here, put there. So 2 rows affected because it's a row thing. If you go back here, you can see the account number 97. Let's go here in this account. So you can see 97 here. This one and this one is set to 0. Okay, all right. So any questions so far with those with these examples of trigger? I hope you are feeling good about triggers now.
What is the use of precedence in the previous?
What is the use of
Precedence?
Oh, it's a keyword. So it's telling the compiler that it will move forward with those things. So it is a keyword. Okay.
Okay.
And I gave you the link. You'll, if you like to, like, say my explanation is not enough, you can read yourself so that you can get a lot more related information on that. Sounds good? Okay. So it's clear. Check the output. Now this is showing how to drop a trigger. So drop and trigger, those are 2 keywords, then the trigger name. Now, if you already have a trigger or you don't know if there is a trigger, you just use this drop trigger if exists trigger name, and it will drop if you try to execute or create it a trigger. If there is a name conflict, then it will remove the older one and will rewrite this thing. So that's all about trigger. If you read the chapter 9 that I posted in week 2, you'll find that after my lecture, and lot more other resources like W3 School or the official manual of MySQL. You will find a lot more about trigger. Okay. Let's move to MySQL events. So we already talked a little bit about MySQL triggers and MySQL events. So now the difference between triggers and event. Now we're going to talk about events. So MySQL events are tasks that run according to a user-defined schedule. So this is very important. It is not only command sensitive, it is actually time sensitive, like when it will run. So I can give you an example. Say in Conestoga College, right? How many employees are there? I believe more than 1,000. More than 1,000 employees in Conestoga, or maybe a couple of thousand. Now we don't know which employee is going to be retired in 2023, right? But we have to make sure database integrity, or we have to follow the government rule. So if the government rule is if someone age of 65, means over 65, that person cannot work anymore, need to be take the retirement. So if you set an event in your Conestoga database that has 2,000 employees, who is going to monitor individually that whose age is going to be turned 65? You understand what I mean? So if you design an event, means database event, and if you associate with the personal information of all the employer, means name, address, date of birth, that's I meaning PII, personally identifiable information. And if you check every year that which person is going to be turned 65, so that you know well ahead that someone will be retiring next year or after 6 months, so you can execute that and you can plan ahead. Is that make sense, this example?
Yes, sir.
So it is not command sensitive, but it is a time sensitive thing. So and you created an event and it is running in your server. It is stored in your server side and it will run once a year, or if you like to run twice a year, or if you run like 3 times a year, so that you know at least 3 months prior. If you run it in every 3 months, then you will know 3 months ahead that which person is going to be retired, because the employee database is very big. And even there are many organizations is larger than Conestoga College. They might have 10,000 employees, and they need to like look at those things every year, and it is impossible to look at manually. I hope this event thing makes sense to you. Okay, let's go back to the slide. An event can be used to create backups, delete. Oh, what is that? Delete is tell. What is that? I'm not sure. Familiar with this. Okay, old. Okay, delete old. I rather replace this thing. Delete old records, aggregate data for reports, and so on. So you can use these events to backup data, delete old records or files, aggregate data for reports, and so on. So you can do different kind of thing, and the employee determinant is one of the examples of them. MySQL event scheduler is a thread that runs in the background and manages the execution of scheduled events. The scheduler is in a sleep state unless the global variable event scheduler is set to on. We are going to check it. This one we'll learn by doing it, so we'll understand. This thing is means the turn on your event scheduler. By default, your server may not, the event scheduler is on. So you have to make sure that event scheduler is on. Are you running your MySQL XAMPP or any other MySQL server in your computer?
Yes, Prof.
Okay, so if yes, then you can see show variables like event scheduler. So all are keywords, and I can copy it. And if I run it here, let's go in SQL, show here. You can see this is off, right? So you have to turn on the event scheduler. So we have to see the word on here, or you have to see it is number 1 here, ON or number 1. So to do that, we have another command to set global event scheduler 1. So if you don't make this global scheduler 1, then the scheduler will not be running, although it is sitting in the server. Okay. Now on, and you can see here, let's go back to the old command again, and you can see it is on now. Let's check again. So this is the command. You need to make sure it is on to run an event. See, now it is on. So it was off because I reset my server and it was turned off. Now with that command, I turn on the event scheduler. So if the event scheduler is on, then it will let the events run when the time arrives or when the time is due. Okay, let's go back to the slide. So now we know how to turn on the event scheduler. Now, this is the general form of create an event. So create event, those are those keywords, right? Event name. Now on schedule. So in on schedule, you will choose the time, like once a year, every month, every week. So that's the thing. Now add timestamp, and so timestamp means you have to set an initial time when it will run first. Then it will periodically run the schedule you will set. Then every, it is a keyword, the interval starts. So every week interval ends. And you have to do the which operations.
Yes, Professor.
Yes, sorry. Someone has question?
No, Professor. I
Oh,
said yes.
it is a noise. Okay. So timestamp will select when the start and end time of the scheduler, mean the schedule. And this is the operation you are going to perform when the scheduled event will run. So this is the SQL block. An event scheduler is actually way simpler or way simple than the trigger because it's run in a certain time. But trigger runs before or after, and all those three different kind of operations: insert, update, and delete. And so it has 6 different kind of places that will place, and that's a trigger will take place. But here the event will take place based on the timing. So let's create a table, right? And the table name is the messages. And I believe I already created while I'm testing this. Let's see if I have the table. The messages. So I already created that table. And this table is empty, right? Let me do one thing. I like to delete that thing. Okay, I can use the if exists command, then it will be easier for me. Let's go create table. And I can actually insert those values as well. So that will be easier for me. This one here, the tables. And I'm going to the message table, and I'm going to drop it. Okay. Just to make life easier. Here, go in SQL command prompt, and I'm going to put all those different things, and I'm going to click on OK. Right. So I created that table again. And you can see there are values. So ID, user ID, now message, and date update date. So this is update date, message, and user ID and ID. So there are 4 columns, right? So say this is an employee table or something, the message table. Now say for Conestoga or for Gmail, how many hundreds, thousands of messages coming every hour. Now, if they like to update or take backup and put those messages in archive, you need an event scheduler. And let's go back to the slide. We created the table, and let's talk about the scheduled event. For this, here you can see drop if exits. So this is a scheduled event name every 10 minutes cleanup. If you like, we can make it 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever works for you. Okay. So we know familiar with this. and create event, we know, is 10 minutes cleanup on scheduled every 10 minutes. Now start time is, you can put any recent time that your choice. I just added, or you can add something like today or now or timestamp, whatever. Now those three are on completion preserved. So when your database backup is done, so those are those three keywords. Again, if you like to know more about those keywords, just find a book or search Google, you will find those are those keywords. Do begin, delete from. So this sentence is very important. So when this schedule event will run, it will delete from the table name where time difference. So time difference is now and less than 168. So messages over 1 week old. So this is the 168 hours. So hours in a week. So see, the starting date is very old. So if we create this event and when it is due, it will actually delete this. And now this end is the end of begin. What is the begin? There should be a begin somewhere. So do begin. Now here and delimiter. So those are those codes. So let's copy these code from here and create this event. Go back. SQL. Now go run here. I can make it like, say, 3 minutes. Let's make it 3 minutes or 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Go. Okay. Now look at this message. And the event has created. Okay. If I click here, oh gosh, is 2 minutes already done? It's already deleted those messages. Let me do another thing. Let me go insert the values again, and so that we can see. Insert those values. Be here, so that you will see multiple values in the table. Then we'll see again. So you can see this. That's not good. This event is on, but it should not take place before at least 2 minutes that I set. What's wrong? Okay, should I stop and restart the server? It should not take more than earlier than 2 minutes. It's interesting. Here, insert all those things. Let's refresh. And yeah, you can see all those data here, right? Now let's run the scheduler, the event again. It's already created, but let's create again to reset the time. So it will drop and create it again. Here. Let's check this message. and it is there. But after 10 minutes, if you check it and this server is running, the message will be erased. Okay, so this is, let's move forward with our lecture and we'll check it after 10 minutes. This time I didn't make it 2 minutes. I know it should, but should not delete it before 2 minutes, but I don't know what's wrong. Okay, so be careful about any delete event, scheduled event. You need to back up, otherwise it will be a disaster by losing data. Okay, so list all events. So if we go here, let's see how many events do we have in DB1 database. Go here, SQL, here, DB1, and let's go. You can see there are only one scheduler here that's called 10 minutes cleanup. Okay, so we can see this. Okay, and status is enabled, and we didn't set any end time of this, so it will keep running until we don't stop. Okay, go to next slide and show events. Also the events for the database that we want. So this is a similar command, and if you run this one, go here in the database, let's go in home and SQL here. It will asking to select the database. Good. Here and here, let's go. So this is also showing this database thing. Okay, the event in the database. So it's a similar command. Let's go back again. We are pretty much end of our presentation. So we check how many events do we have. Now those are those commands for disable an event. So alter event, and those are those kept thing are keywords. Alter event, then enable, alter event, event name, rename to an event, command to drop an event. So I should make this one is like this, so it will be easier to understand. Yes, alter event and rename. Now command to drop the event, drop event, and command to drop the event if exists, if you are not sure if there is an event with the same name. Now this is the difference between the trigger and the events. A trigger is invoked, or a trigger is taken place automatically when an SQL or SQL statement changes rows on a specified table. An event is invoked or took place automatically at a predetermined time. So it's a time sensitive thing, and can be a one-time occurrence or a regular occurrence based on your choice of choosing the timestamp. So that's all for now on the slide. Let's stop.